Sorry, I shifted your video there. Here we go. Has hard drive quality decreased over the years? Seagate drives formerly carried a 5-year warranty, which has been reduced to 3 years. Is this indicative of overall quality, i.e., they don't make them like they used to?
Yep, I agree. I agree that I think drives are made a lower quality today. I think what's happened basically is in this race to, first thing is they're in a race to get the cheapest drive out there. I mean, if you really think about it, if you look at the parts and the work that went into making a 2 terabyte drive for, $55 or whatever, you know that it's worth a lot more than $55. So surprisingly enough, probably if you just add up the parts, it might be close to being more than $55 worth of stuff for that space. I think that they're using lower grade memory. They're not baking it as long as they used to. You have more degenerative parts that are not going to keep up with it. And certainly there has been a change in the way the technology works that has been written to the drive. So in the old days, let's say the 90s being the old days, drives were written with an MR head. And that magnetic resisto head basically is writing in a longitudinal fashion on the drive. That content is a little easier for those heads to read, and the drive is a little more robust. However, it was also more expensive. So, if you spend, $300 on a drive that's a 40 gig drive, you're expecting it to work longer periods of time. Well, you wouldn't have had 40 gigs in the 90s. That you're not looking at 40 gigs until 2001 or so.
Right.
But roughly speaking, you had differences in quality in memory and boards and technology and what has actually been used over that time. Then you have today, you have this race to create the cheapest generic piece of junk by the lowest manufacturer in China. Chips and the quality are rushed, and there's not a lot of testing time. If you really look at even like our progression to what's called perpendicular recording, which all the drives currently use, it was released in 2006. The first actual books and technology that I read on it coming into play in hard drives was in 2004. So they actually went from there to production and out the door. Now, I'm not saying that that was the entire time that it was actually produced before it got there, but I can't imagine that they had a large period of time to actually test it before it actually went out the door.
Oh, no.
So,
2 years? Come on.
yeah, at best, if that. I mean, they're in a hurry to get it out the door. And that's kind of the situation that we're finding more and more. And that's the difference between enterprise drives. Enterprise drives are made with higher quality electronics, the things that have been baked longer, and that's why they cost more. That's also why SCSI drives cost more. Their reliability factor is a little bit higher, and the quality of the equipment and what they're actually using is a better quality.
Right.
So, you go buy a $50 drive, that's what you're going to get is a $50 drive. You buy 2 of them so you can back up on it. Maybe you should buy 3 of them so that you can do it in triple redundancy. But yeah.
I just bought 2. I don't know what you're buying drives for, but I was kind of proud of myself. Bought 2 drives over at CompUSA the other day, 2 terabyte SATA drives for $79 each.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's a good deal. Good.
Yeah, yeah.
The sales flyer said $99 each, but when I paid for them, it came up as $79. So
wow.
I said, "Are you sure that's right?" And he said, "Yeah, that's right." So
well, maybe that's why CompUSA is going out of business. No, just kidding.
It's basically a Tiger Direct.
I know. I'm kidding. That was a joke.
All right. Next email. We've covered this before, but let's just do it again, just for the heck of it. Not this exact email, but this question. One question for the hard drive guru, Scott Moulton. What program for data recovery or to recover data or files that have been overwritten would you suggest? The internet is not helping make it clear which one is the best. The list of, quote, good ones I found for what I think is, and she lists, or it's Jan. I don't know if it's Jan as a guy or girl, in Italy. He says, Digital Rescue Premium, Advanced Disk Recovery, Recover My Files, Data Recovery Wizard, and Get Data Back is the list he dug up. But what do you think, Scott?
Well, if I understand what you just read me, it said overwritten files.
Yeah, yes.
If you overwrote the data, it is not recoverable with any software.
Ah.
Period. It's overwritten. Therefore, in that magnetic space, there is now something else.
Okay.
So deleted and overwritten are 2 different things. So deleted files, basically, there is still residual space on the drive that includes that content. And so from that standpoint, it would be recoverable by searching the drive by what's called headers. Basically, there's a string at the front of a file and the end of a file that basically say, I am a file, here I am, go get me. Or, certain instances where like the MFT in Windows, master file table, contains data, that shows that something else was deleted but still exists on the drive. So in those cases, I typically run Get Data Back or RStudios are two of the major packages that I use from that standpoint. You could also use some free tools like Scalpel or Foremost to get the job done. Basically searching for those headers. There's another one that's called Test Disk. It basically has a program that goes with it. It's called PhotoRec. And PhotoRec is a fantastic little application that they've added a lot of headers from a lot of file names. It doesn't just recover photos at this point, it recovers other content. But to kind of end that discussion, if it's overwritten, if I actually overwrote the file with something or I used a pattern wiping tool and overwrote it, it's gone. Yeah, there's no way to recover that data.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that, Jan, but thank you for the email. William writes in, and you last show you were talking about backup software that you were liking and testing and stuff.
Yeah,
online back. We had some guys, and William's one of them, who loves CrashPlan. He says CrashPlan rules. I can max my upstream connection with it.
Right.
So what?
Well, I really haven't tried CrashPlan. It's one of the ones that's kind of on my list to go back and double check kind of thing. The thing with CrashPlan, the way I understand it, is basically it kind of makes all of your machines kind of a RAID array. Basically, it distributes your content across all your machines, and all your machines basically become your backup devices wherever they're at. And so I probably need to spend a little time going back and doing that. But over Christmas and then doing the research for this particular talk, I didn't have time to cover that again. I've been really happy with Dropbox, just from a standpoint of I have 10 machines that it basically syncs and redistributes all my data back to, but I am limited to 100 gigs on their current plan. So but pumping 100 gigs is pretty tough anyway.
Right. So you're still using Dropbox then?
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of Dropbox. I think it's a great way. I mean, it makes a folder on your drive, you put your stuff in there, and you don't even have to pay attention to it from that point. It will automatically duplicate whatever files are in there to whatever other machines that you have the same account for Dropbox installed on. So I use, I have a development Mac. I have a Mac that I use when I'm actually traveling. That's kind of a blank Mac that, if it gets seized at the airport or something like that, that there's no company data on. And I use that one for, projects that I'm projecting or doing talks at cons and things like that. And basically I can work at something on my desk, hop up, hit the road, and then it syncs to my laptop when I get to the hotel. I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. And it tends to work extremely well without me having to pay any attention to it.
Yeah, I'm a fan too. I mean, I use PogoPlug, and I got that, and I've been using that for a while, but I use PogoPlug in conjunction with Dropbox. They're both really cool.
Right.
Okay, this one is from Simon. I think we read this one, but see if this refreshes your memory. He says, "Hey, Steve, I took Scott's class, and I loved it. I had a couple of questions for next time you have him on. I usually use my DeepSpar DDI for recovery, but occasionally I hook up damaged drives to my write blocker, and that unit is firewalled to an XP box. I wondered, does FireWire see the full ATA command set, or am I better off just hooking up through SATA or IDE? FireWire is pretty convenient and fast for scanning." Let's see. I'll read the second part. I'm not sure if it's related to the first. "I had an SAS drive recovery recently. Wondered if there's any advice you could give on dealing with their interface. I've heard there are several different types, and the interface does not work with many of the recovery tools I have. Are there adapters that can be used with these types of drives?" Okay, it looks like second question, 2 questions, but that's from Simon.
Right. Okay. So the first part of that is one more time. What was just hit it again real quick?
Yeah, I usually use my DeepSpar DDI for recovery, but occasionally I hook up damaged drives to my write blocker, and that unit is firewalled to an XP box.
So on the FireWire side, FireWire is a little bit more featured than the USB or the USB devices. However, the devices that typically support them are limited in their capabilities anyway. So in other words, if you're using a write blocker, whatever the commands and the control that you have for that particular write blocker are probably the same commands and control. Your problem with a write blocker is that it is basically software that's emulated, that's running inside of a write blocker. When a bad block comes across or bad sectors come across, if it doesn't get what it's expecting, then basically the write blocker can crash and lock up on its own as well. It's kind of software in a box that prevents you from writing to the disk. And so there are times where you have a weird size or you've got some damaged area that the write blocker itself will lock up. But you are better off probably using FireWire, especially for the throughput, or eSATA, which then you're looking at a different write blocker or something along those lines, and you would get more throughput than you would through USB and the capability a little bit more robustly. FireWire supports more native commands and as a more robust command set than USB is from that standpoint. Now on the SAS side, really you're kind of stuck on the SAS side. You really have to use the basic controller that supports SAS. There's not really converters and things like there is to go from SATA to SAS or whatever. I know that there's a lot of things out there that basically say I can use a converter from a SAS to a SATA, but it's not in that way. It's not for SAS drives. It's basically for like a bridge that it uses for a connector, but it's not to support the device or the drive command itself. So when I'm doing recovery on a SAS device, I actually have to have it controlled by a SAS controller and trying to image it and do that whole thing. Your problem is most of the time SAS drives are coming out of a RAID array, and so you've got to treat them individually and then bind them all together anyway. Excuse me. Great. So you do have to still go through the process of imaging every single drive and doing the standard recovery. But on the flip side, SAS and SCSI is a more robust protocol than what we're using for IDE and SATA.
Right. Good. Very good. Let me read. Actually, that's it for the voicemails. That's it for the emails. I have one voicemail. Hang on, Scott. I got to stop the recording here for 1 sec and record the voicemail. Okay, unmute that. Let me just make sure it plays properly, and then we will start the recording again.
Hello, Steve. This is Door Geek. I had a couple questions for Scott and my hard drive guys. Well, first thing, I just asked Scott to not count crash plan out.
Okay, one more test here.
Hello, Steve. This is Door Geek. I had a couple questions for Scott and my hard drive guys.
Okay, and I'm going to start the recording again, and I'll play the voicemail. Could you hear that, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, you hear it? Okay, here we go. What? Recording. What?
Nothing. I just, a lot of people want to talk about crash plan. I guess I'm gonna have to go back and look at. Okay.
All right, here we go. Here's a message from the Door Geek to Scott.
Hello, Steve. This is Door Geek. I had a couple questions for Scott and my hard drive guys. Well, first thing, I just asked Scott to not count crash plan out, partially because of its flexibility. He can set up his own master server and sync back and forth to that. If you do that and you don't pay them, it's not syncing, it's backup. If you do pay to use their service, then it is syncing. It's a very interesting product. I appreciate it because it's truly cross-platform. Second thing was SpinRite. I know, I'm never going to drop it. My question to him is, how does he feel about using it for maintenance instead of recovery? The main reason I ask is I have now a 9 or 10-year-old drive, and it's still working apparently just fine.
Oh, looks like Door got cut off. But you did answer the question about SpinRite for maintenance. It's funny that two of those questions came in at the same time.
Question. Yeah. I mean, certainly SpinRite for maintenance. I mean, I can see that, working fine. Obviously the problem is basically it comes on a floppy or a CD or disk or whatever, and you've got to reboot your machine, run maintenance on it. It'll take a day for it to run, and then, reboot, whatever. But certainly I don't really have a problem with that. And, since the same person is talking about crash plan, I'm assuming he has a backup. So as long as he's got a backup and he's safe, then that's not a problem. I understand. My only problem with SpinRite as a whole ever is that they call it recovery software, but it doesn't recover anything. It puts it right back on the same drive.
Right.
If it was going to recover something, it should write that to a secondary drive. And so that would be fantastic if they ever enabled that so that it would write to a second drive. Then we would have at least a different way for me to talk about SpinRite. But that's a lot of people seem to be very happy and dependent upon it, but not really know exactly what it